Good morning, everyone. This is Caroline for Craftapple. And today's project is going to be this beaded bell. This is a long project, folks. They take like 2 or 3 hours. Like this, they take 2 or 3 hours for me, and I know what I'm doing. So this is going to take a chunk of time. I may have to break this video actually up into multiple parts. I imagine you're not going to be able to do this all in one sitting unless you have like all Saturday or something. It's pretty complex. So if you've never done beadwork before, I do not suggest you start with this project. I suggest that you start with the Starlight Snowflake because it uses the same technique, but you only have to do it once. So if it confuses you, you can do it, try this project many times until, it starts to make sense to you, and then you can try this project. This is not a project for those of you who have trouble with logic. It's gonna take some repetition before you get the pattern of what's going on here. And I don't say that to be mean. I say that so that you're prepared to do this, okay? I totally want you all to succeed. I really, really do. And that's why I suggest you do this one first. Even if you don't like this pattern, you don't like the design, do it anyway because you will be glad you did. If you have no experience beading, you'll be glad you did. Okay, so this pattern is the same basic technique. On this one, we go around the circle and then we put the arms on. And we go back through these 2 beads here in the middle to get ready for our next arm. Back through the beads to put on our next arm. Back through these middle 2 to put on the next arm. This one, we're going to be doing that a bazillion times. We're going to first put on this bottom ring of 12 8mm beads. Then we're going to go back through, and every other one we're going to put on this frill. And then the next time around we're going to fill in the ones that we skipped over the previous round by going through these beads. So we're going to end up going through those beads like 4, 5, 6 times. I don't remember. Then after that, we're going to put on this row here, which we're going to be coming out again of one of those bottom 12. We're going to put on one of these oats, one of these 2.5mm, another oat, and then we're going to go through this next bead. We're going to put on another oat, another 2.5mm, another oat, and go through the next bead in that series of 12. Put on another oat, another 2.5mm, another oat, going through the next one all the way around. And then when we get back to where we started, we're going to go up the oat and out the 2.5mm and put on our next row of oats and 2.5mm all the way around. And this time we're going to go through the 2.5mm that we put on our previous row to get us set up for our next little mountain here. And then when we get all the way around there, then we're going to put on 6 8mm beads in between these 2.5mm. So we'll come through a 2.5mm from the row we just put on. We'll put on an 8mm. We'll go through the next 2.5mm from our previous row, put on our next 8mm. Go through the next 2.5mm in our previous row, put on another 8mm. And we get all the way around and we go through that first 2.5mm again. We're going to go through that whole process again to put on the 3rd row, and again to put on a 4th row, and again to put on this top row, except for in this top row, instead of putting 8mm beads in between our 2.5mm beads, we're just going to put another 2.5mm bead in there. So we're going to do that all the way around, and we're going to actually go through that row a second time to keep it nice and tight. Then we're going to put on these 2 of these, the bottom 2 of these oat beads on top that kind of make this hanger, to help make this hanger. Then we're going to go back through the the second of those two. Then we're going to go down here and put on this one and come back up. And then put on this one and go down and come back up. Then we're going to put on the clapper. We're going to come down to the end and then make a U-turn and go back up. Then when we get back to the top, we're going to put on this big one here and put on our hanger and go back through this bead and then go back down the first oat in this series of 4 that we put on, and then maneuver our string all the way back down to the bottom of our bell to where our tail is. We're going to leave a tail at the beginning, so we're going to make our way back to the tail and tie a knot. So that's the overview of how you do this. So as you might have gathered as I talked about this, it took 3 minutes to tell you what we're doing, it's going to take you a while to do this. So make sure that you have time or that you are prepared to take breaks, which if it's the first time you've done this, you may want to do. It can be frustrating. I'm going to just be honest here. It can be really frustrating to try a new project because your string will be going everywhere and your beads will be falling off, and the cat's playing with your string, or your child comes up and grabs it, or who knows what. Anything can happen, folks. Anything can happen in the real world. So you gotta just be chill and know that these things happen even to the best of us. You're gonna end up with a mess once or twice. That is totally normal. Nothing wrong with you at all, okay, if that happens. And hopefully I will be explicit enough telling you where your string should be coming out and where it should be going, that if that happens, you can find your spot again. And if all else fails, like there's no knots in this until the very end, you can always pull the beads off and start over. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had to do that. I had to do that 3 times yesterday because I first I did this bell in my 20-pound test that I was using for the other ornaments, and it was okay, except that I could only get the string to go back through the beads like 3 times, and you have to go like 4 times through the beads. So I had to find a skinnier fishing line. So I had a thing of 8-pound test. So that's what I am using for this project today. I may find some 10 or something to put in your kits. But like the string was so much skinnier that like it was just loosey-goosey, and I hadn't been used to it being so loosey-goosey. So then my beads fell off, and then I tried to leave a longer tail and keep it tightened up, and my beads fell off again. And then I did it again, and my son grabbed it and pulled it over to where he was, and the string was so loosey-goosey that all the beads came off again. So it took me 4 tries to get the first row on. So life happens, folks. Life just happens. So don't get discouraged if that happens to you. Just know that it happens to everybody. And yeah. So if you're afraid of that happening to you, and you happen to have a binder clip in your desk drawer, or a chip clip in your kitchen, or a clothespin in your laundry room, you might consider getting those out and just pinching your string at the tail end so that you don't lose your beads. And I didn't have any of those things handy, or I might have done that myself. Alrighty, folks, let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to point my camera down so that you can see me working. And I'm going to apologize in advance for picking these black beads. I thought they were really pretty, and I thought they would go really well with this gold, which I think they really do, but it's probably going to be hard for you folks at home to see the hole as I put the string through. So I apologize for that. I was not thinking ahead. I just thought, oh, those are pretty. Famous last words, Caroline. Famous last words. Alrighty, so I'll see you folks back here in just a second. Alright, folks, I've got my camera situated here, and I've got all my materials, all my supplies down here in this little blue thing. I got my monofilament in my hand. You're going to need about 3 yards of monofilament for this. I'm using 8-pound test because that's what I had in my box. You can probably get away with up to about 15-pound, but I haven't tried it, so you'll have to experiment. What I do know is that 20-pound test is too heavy, so if you have 20-pound test or more, it's not going to work for you. I'm also using 38 8mm black beads. You'll need 64 oat beads. You'll need 150 2.5mm beads. You'll need, I told you, 3 yards of fishing line. And that's about it. You'll need a lot of patience for this. That too. Can't forget that. If you're having a frustrating day, this is not the project to be attempting. Maybe an icicle or a candy cane. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, and also I am going to be putting together kits for you. In fact, I have some already kind of made up in these buckets, but they're not in little bags with their cute little labels yet. I'm going to be weighing out these beads, and how I'm doing that is I'm counting out how many I need and then adding another 1/10 of a gram of beads in there so that you have some extra in case you drop one, or they're stuck together, or they look funny, or the hole isn't drilled all the way through, or whatever other problems can happen to these beads. So try and keep track of them, because the supply is not, what's that word, infinite? The supply is not infinite, but there should be a few extra in there. And if you do have extra and you think your hanger is too short, you can add them onto your hanger and make your hanger longer, like I just did on this one. A lot easier to put around your Christmas tree branch, if you're so inclined. Okay, so I'm going to watch my camera and see how it focuses, and if it doesn't focus well, I'll move this tray out. But we're going to put on 12 beads here, and I am going to be careful about where I have my hand down here. I'm going to give myself some space, like a foot or so of space, and then I'm going to hold my string across my left hand and close my fingers over it, tight enough that this string isn't going anywhere really, and just to keep my beads from flying off the other end onto the floor somewhere. So I'm just kind of having this hanging on, and I'm just going to ignore it for a while. Just make sure I keep those fingers clenched around it. And I'm going to put 12 of my black beads, 12 of my 8mm beads on here. I put one already. And when I put these on, I'm going to hold them so that the hole is going straight up and down through my fingers, or straight sideways through my fingers. I don't want my finger to be blocking that hole. And then I can just really easily thread it on there. Now this fishing line is not very thick, so it's not very stiff, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is that it's a little trickier to get it through these holes just because it likes to bend a little bit. But the good thing is that you can get it through there more times. And we're going to have to go through some of these beads like 4 or 5 times. So that's important later on. So I have 4 on my strand right now. I'm going to keep putting them on. 5. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm not happy with how it's looking. How many do I have down there? I have 5. So this is number 6. 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, now I'm going to take my tail end, this short end that I've been working with, and I am going to make a ring with it around my other end of my string, and I'm going to carefully slide my beads back onto that short end to make a ring. That's the easiest way I've found to go back through beads, is to lay my working end alongside the end that is already strung and just slide the beads back onto that working end. In this case, this working end is really our tail end. This is the end that we're going to keep kind of short to tie our knot with when we get finished with the end of the bell. So that's kind of confusing right now because I'm calling it both the working end and the tail end, but this is the short end, folks. Okay, I've gone around once now. And I'm going to do, because this fishing line is so wibbly wobbly, so thin, I'm going to go through those beads a second time. So I'm just going to continue to go around my circle and, uh-oh, I lost my end. Oh, no, 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 no. See, they're falling off on me. So I'm going to have to restring those couple. So this is what I was saying about, your beads falling off. They do. They really do. Okay, so I'm going to pull this tail a little bit longer. I'm going to hold that one over there so they don't fall off over there. If I can, I'm going to lay this tail end up here by my other strings, and I'm going to push my beads over onto it again. So here I am still, I'm going around. Okay, I'm back through them all. So now I have 2 loops going through all of my beads. Actually, nope, I don't, but I should. 2 escaped my notice, so I'm going to go through those now. Okay, now you have kind of a French horn shape where you've got 2 strings going through them all, and then one, well, you actually do have 3 going through them all, but you have 2 looping, and then you have your tail over here and your big long piece over here. And I'm actually going to go back through this first one over here again, and then I'm going to pull on both ends of my string. I need the end. And cinch this up into a ring. And if you have your chip clip or binder clip or whatever, this would be a good time to put it right there on your tail. Leave your tail kind of long because it's going to want to loosen up a bit more until we get our little frills on. And that's what we're going to do right now. I also want to make note that as we work on this bell, we're always going to go in the same direction. Now that may not mean much if you get your work turned upside down, but it ought to be evident because your string will always be coming out of a bead, right? And so the one that we're going to put the string into next is going to be, we're going to skip this one and go into this one, okay? Because we're working around a bead to make a loop, and then we're going through the next one. So we're coming out, we're going to skip, we're going to go in. And then the string will be coming out on this side of that bead. So then we're going to skip this bead and go into this bead right here. And then we'll be coming out of it on this side. So it should be evident based on where your string is coming from, which direction your string should be going, which bead it is that you're going to put. So it's coming out here. We're not going to bend it backwards to go through there. No, we're going to keep the direction of the string where it's inclined to go. See how it just kind of like lays nicely up against that bead, kind of like it's tangent to it, like a beautiful little tangent or like a little mountain. And so we're going to just finish the second half of the mountain and stick it through this next bead. So hopefully that will keep you from getting lost. So just you know, keep that in the back of your mind. And now we're going to do the little frills. So the first frill, all of the frills are going to have the same number and kind of beads on them. They're all going to have 6 of these 2.5 millimeter beads. But I will do it with you. Oh, these two are stuck together. I'm going to try and use my thumbnail to break them apart. Oh, it worked. Yay. Sometimes they're too glued together, like the paint sticks them together and it's a thick enough layer of paint that they won't come apart. Just toss them. There should be enough in your kit to replace them. The kits for these should be up on my Etsy site shortly, hopefully later today, maybe even before this video posts, because I'm sure I'll have a lot of editing to do before I get that up there. So now I have 5 beads on there. I need one more. Okay. All right. So now I can tell that my string is coming out of this bead here. So we're going to see it's making the mountain here. We're going to go over to make the other side of the mountain and go through the next bead in our chain and pull our string through. And I just want to say that you have such a long piece of string and it's been coiled on a spool for so long that it's held its curly shape. And so I found yesterday as I was working on my example that it kept curling around itself in all kinds of interesting ways and tying knots. So if that is happening to you, that's perfectly normal. Just kind of watch out for it and try not to pull the knots tight before you figure out where the string is going. Try and keep it loose and then pull the knots out while it's still kind of loose. Because once you tighten it up and it stretches and relaxes back into the knot, you're going to have a heck of a time getting it undone again. So just beware of that. All right, so now we have one little frill on. So we're going to go around, we're going to do our next frill. So we're putting on 6 more of those little gold beads. And how I'm going to do that is I've got all of my things out in this tray. You can probably use a plate. Most people have a plate in their house. And I'm going to pinch my working end between my thumb and forefinger. I'm not going to leave a lot of space, like an inch, 3/4 of an inch, something. Because the weight of the beads sometimes wants to pull this faux needle out of shape. But I'm going to use the needle, the end of my fishing line, like a needle, to poke into the hole of the bead and just scoop it up. That's a lot faster than picking up the beads one at a time and putting them on, though there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if that is what works for you, absolutely that's what you should do. So I've got 1 on. So I'm going to poke through the hole again, 2 on, poking through the hole, 3 on, poking through the hole, 4 on. And also, as I'm doing this, I'm noticing that I'm putting the string into the hole and then I'm kind of pushing it over onto its side so that I can scoop through the hole. So I'm kind of pushing it in a little bit and then like using a little pressure to pull it over onto its side so I can scoop it up. So now I have 6 on there. And I'm dumping, this thing has a hole in the end. It's dumping all my beads out all over everywhere. Thanks tray. This is a tray that's supposed to help you put the beads back into their containers, but the hole is too small for most of my beads. Unless I'm working with seed beads, which, you know, whatever. And it has a stop. I'm not sure where the stopper is. Alright, so we're going to go through our next bead. You can see our string coming out over here and making a nice mountain against this bead. So we're going to go through the next bead in line. This one here. I'm sorry you can't really see the hole. For one, it's in a circle, so it's hard to see, but also the beads are black, which doesn't help because black absorbs light. You need to reflect the light in order to see. Okay. Well, there we go. Now we're going to do our next one. We're going to keep doing this and doing this and doing this. You're going to be sick of it by the time we're done. All right, so we're putting 6 more beads onto our string. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it got away. 4, 5, 6. Okay, and now we can see that our string is coming out over here, and it's making a nice mountain against this bead. So we're going to go in the next bead in the string. Now, what is nice about this loosey-goosey string is that I can really easily bend this ring out of shape so that I can push the bead up and find the hole. Once this gets tighter, that's going to be trickier to do. You can still do it, but it's trickier. You gotta stick your thumbnail in there sometimes to poke the bead out, especially the 2.5 millimeter ones. Those are, and especially around the very top, that can be tricky. But you'll get some practice before then. So you just saw me there pulling on my tail end to just snug this up a little bit, just so my beads aren't as likely to fall off. Now we're ready for our 4th little frill. I'm going to put on 6 more 2.5 millimeters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let those fall down. And now we got to go through the next bead in our ring. I can see that this is my tail over here. I can see that my string is coming out of this bead and it's making a nice mountain over this bead, so I'm going to go through this bead right here. Okay, pull that snug. Now I'm going to go through the next one. So I'll put 6 more of those 2 millimeter beads on, 2.5 millimeter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let those fall down. And then I'm going to go through the next bead in my ring. So I can see that my string is coming out here. I'm going to skip this bead then that's underneath the mountain and go in the next one in the ring. Okay, and now I'm going to make 1 more little frill on there. So 6 more 2.5 millimeters on your string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now we're going to go through our next one. So we've got, it's our tail end, trying to confuse us right there. We got our thread coming out of this bead here, making a nice mountain over here, and we're going to go through this one and this one. Now it might go through both of them together, and in my case they did. If they don't, that's okay. Just, you know, get it through one and then get it through the other one. Sorry, my loop keeps snagging over here. I've got a split in my table and it keeps snagging over there. So that's why I keep moving off screen. All right, so now we're going to put on our second set of 6. And I'm going to make note here that it matters where a string comes out. In order to get this pretty little up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up pattern. Our string has to be landing in those places. Now, if they don't immediately land in those places, we can wiggle our string so that they do land in those places. All right? So you don't need to get all in a huff about it. It is totally manageable. You can do it. I have absolute faith in you, okay? But if you don't do it, then what you're going to have is 6 of these floating high and 6 of them floating low. It's going to look like 2 tiers. It's not going to look like one continuous layer. So that is, and I don't have one that's done like that because I've been very careful to not do it. So I don't have one to show you, but it'll become apparent. And, you know, if it does, take out those couple loops and try it a different way. That's all you can do, and that's all it requires, really. So now I can see that my string is coming out below my ring of 2 millimeters, or my loop of 2 millimeters, and making a mountain over this bead. So we're going to put on our 6, and we're going to skip over this bead. So go ahead and put your 6 2.5 millimeter beads on. My string is trying to tie itself in knots for me. I'm trying to keep it nice and loosey-goosey and figure out where my strings are going. Yeah, it's tied itself into a slip knot. That's very common, folks. Slip knots, yes. Okay, and there it was just twisted. Okay, so I got the end of my string again, and I'm going to put on 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, now we're going to take a look at this again. I'm going to move my beads down to the end. Okay, and like I showed you a second ago, my string is coming out underneath these beads right here. It's making a mountain over this one, so we're going to go underneath the next one. But we're going to take our string and make sure to put it through that bead over the top of this frill. We want it to go over top, but then come out underneath on the other side. Can you see that? How it's making like an X underneath. It's going in on top on this side, or if I hold it like this, it's to the left of that row going in, and it's to the right of that row coming out. And that's going to help give us that continuous scalloped look. So I'm going to pull my string through, and there we go. It's scalloped like that. And right away you can see that it's scalloped like that. And if yours looks like it's got 2 on one side and then 1 on the other side, you can keep that look if you want to. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my preference. It can totally be your preference. That's fine. But if you don't want it that way, then you can just, take out that end that you just put in, just pull it right back out, and then figure out, well, what side of that is it going in? Oh, it's going into the right. Oh, it needs to go into the left. Or it's coming out the bottom. I need to go in over the top. And you want them all to be the same. So that's why I came out the bottom again over there. Continue my frill. All right, I'm going to put the next frill on now. So 6 of these little gold ones. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now I can tell that my string is coming out of this bead right here, and it's wanting to make the mountain across this bead here. So we're going to go through this bead here, So that's the bead we're going through, and I can tell my string is coming out to the right side here, or to the bottom, however I want to look at it. So my string has to go through to the left of this frill, or to the top, however I want to think about it. So I'm going to stick my string in there, and I want it to come out the bottom over here. Now, how I'm making that happen, folks, is I'm putting it in here, and then I'm using my thumb right here to push the bead out of alignment so that the hole is coming out over here. I'm sure I make it look so easy, and you know, I've been doing this since I was in like 6th grade, so that's been a couple days ago, post-dinosaur, but still a long time ago. And so like some of these things I do just like automatically without thinking about it, and then I'm like, oh, this probably isn't apparent to some of you out there. So if you all have questions about this, please be sure to ask them down in the comments section so that I can get back to you and help you be successful, because ultimately that's what I want. I want you to be successful. I want you to enjoy this. So now I'm going to put on my next frill, so 6 more gold beads, little gold beads on my string. So I got 1 here, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I gotta scoot those down. 4, 5, 6. Now you can go ahead and put them on and let them fall all down one at a time. This is just kind of a habit I've gotten myself into because it's fast. And it's easier to do with the small beads than it is with the big ones. So a lot of times you'll see me pick up a big bead with my thumb and forefingers, and then you'll see me snag up onto a needle or onto the end of my fishing line as if it were a needle, the little small ones. All right, so now we got to go through our next big bead. So you can see here that my string is coming out of this one, making a mountain over this one, or trying to make its mountain over this one. So we're going to go through this bead. So I'm going to put my hands on it, right, so I don't lose it. And then I can tell that my string is coming out to the right hand side of this row of gold beads. If I pull it that way, you can really see. So I have to go through this bead on this side, this to the left hand side of my row of gold. So I'm going to stick my string into the left. If I can find the hole. There it is. Okay, and then I'm going to use my thumb to push that bead out of alignment, out of circle. Uh-oh, I don't know that my string went in. All right, so there's my hole. So I'm going to put my string in on this side. This is my tail getting in the way. And then, oh, look at that. My string came out to the left again. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that through a little bit. I'll just pull it all the way through. Okay, but then I'm going to take my working end and I'm just going to thread it underneath. Thread it underneath this frill. I'm going to be careful not to tie my string in a knot so that my string is ending up down there. All right, so once I get my string through, you can see now it's coming through to the right of this frill. Okay, and now it's time to put on our next frill. So 6 more little gold beads on your line. 1, 2, 3, oh, that one went away. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and letting those fall down. Okay, and now I'm trying to decide where I got to put my string. So I can tell that it's coming out of this one. It's making that nice mountain shape over this one. So I have to go through this one that's got the gold band across it. And I'm noticing down here, so I can put my fingers on it like I got here just to hold it so that I don't forget. So I see that I've got a mountain here and the string is coming out to the right of this frill. So I need to go into the left of this frill over here. So it's in that bead, and now I'm going to use my thumb to push it the other way so that hopefully, yep, my string is coming out to the right of that gold frill over there. So I'm going to pull that through. And you can see my tail getting in the way again because it's, you know, handy like that. Okay, and now I'm ready for my next frill. So 6 more gold beads on my string. There we go, 6 more. I'm going to let those fall down to the bottom. Now I'm going to decide which bead I have to go through on my center ring. Okay, this is my tail, which is in my way. I'm going to try and trap it down here under my fingers. Okay, so I can tell my working string is coming out of this bead right here. You see that? And it's making a mountain over this one. So I'm going to go through this one here that's got the gold frill on it. So I'm going to put my fingers there. And this string right here, that's my tail getting in the way. I'm also noticing that this string is coming out of the right side of on the right side of this gold frill. So I have to go to put my string on the left side of this one up here. So I'm going to have to push my bead a little bit to find the hole on the left side, and then push the bead out of center with my left thumb in order to get my string to come out to the right side on the other side of the bead, to the right side of that frill on the other side of the black bead. And then I can pull that tight as well. Okay, and now we only have 1 more frill to put on. So 6 more beads on your string. 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Now, this one, it's pretty obvious which bead we're going to skip because it's the only one without a frill on it. But we do need to keep our string going the right direction. So, this is my tail here. So clearly we got to get that out of the way. All right, so now here's my long string right here. And it is coming out of this bead. So we're going to, and it's making a mountain across this bead. So we're going to go into this bead here between my thumb and middle finger. We're also noticing that our string is to the right hand side of the frill on this bead, so we need to go through the left hand side of the frill on this bead over here. So I'm going to stick my string in, and then I'm going to use my thumb to like push that bead out of alignment so that my string comes up under there. And pull my string through until it's tight. Okay, so at this point, you should not be needing to worry about your beads falling off. It's not going anywhere unless you start pulling on these. So don't pull on those. But, you know, if you have your binder clip or your chip clip or whatever, you know, go ahead, keep it on there. It's not going to hurt anything. But if it's in your way, you can take it off and not really have to worry too much. I'd still keep it away from your cat and your 2-year-old though. Mine's 3. So, yeah. Keep it away from your toddler and your cat. Okay, now we're going to do the next row. I'll show you again which row that is. You can see we're coming up from our row of 12, putting on an oat, and then a 2.5 millimeter and an oat, and then going through the next, all the way around. So we'll have 6 of those little triangle shapes coming up so that it looks like they're between each one of the black beads. So if you need a break, we've been at this for 40 minutes, so this is a good time for a break. If not, we're going to keep going here. So we're going to go ahead and put an oat, a 2.5 millimeter, and an oat on our string. Oh, look at me, I got a knot. I got an overhead knot this time, so I'm going to push the string out of its knot. See, the knots happen to the best of us. Not that I'm the very best beater of all time, just saying. Happens to us all. Okay, so here's an oat. And here's a 2.5 millimeter, and you notice that time I picked it up, just picking up one doesn't really matter too much, doesn't save you too much time to pick them all up on your, pretending it's a needle. All right, so I'm going to work on this side because this is the side where my string is coming out. It doesn't matter really because both sides are the same, but I am still going to keep my string going in the same direction. This is my tail down here, so I'm going to tuck it out of the way. This is my working string. And now this time when I go through, I want all of my strings to be on the same side of all of my frills. So I can see here that my string is coming out of this bead right here, and it's making a mountain over top of this one. So I'm going to go through this bead right here, and I'm going to push my finger up and these two down so that that bead is sitting kind of out of the ring so that I can get to my hole, and so that the string comes out the other side where I want it, to the left of all of those frilly things. Okay, so I have that. And we're going to do that 5 more times. So, oat bead. And see, now I'm using my needle technique. It just happens to be whatever I feel like at the moment. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. Gotta be careful not to make these generalizations because, yeah, they don't generalize very well. Alright, so now I gotta go through another one of my center ring beads. So again, I notice my string is coming out of this bead here and making a lovely mountain over this bead here. So I gotta go through this bead here. And I notice that my beads are to the left over here of the frill. So again, we want to keep our string to the left of the frill. So I'm going to push that bead out of the ring. Just going to squish the ring so that it's kind of on the end of an oval, and put my string through so that it comes and goes through that bead all to the left of my frills. All right, and then I'm going to go on to the next triangle. I'm going to call those triangles. So oat bead, 2.5 millimeter bead, oat bead. Okay, and now we're ready to go through our next center ring bead. So I can tell my string is coming out of this bead right here. I don't know if you can see that very well or not, but it is. And it's making a lovely triangle over this bead. So we're going to go into this bead here. And I'm noticing that my triangle is to the right of all of my frilly stuff back here. So again, we want all of our triangle to be to the right of the frilly stuff over here. So I'm going to squish my circle so that the holes of this bead are where I can get to them, and stick in my string so that everything is to the left of those beads. Everything is to the left of my frill beads. Okay, and there we have another triangle. So 3 more on this row. Oat bead, 2.5 millimeter bead, oat bead. Okay, we can let those fall down to the end, and now we got to go through our next centering bead. All right, so I can tell that my string is coming out of this bead right here, and it's making a lovely triangle over this bead right here. So I need to go through this bead here, and I also, so I got my thumb and forefinger on it so I don't lose it, and I'm noticing that my triangle sequence is to the right of my frills. So I want to make sure that my triangle stuff is to the right of my frills down here. So I'm kind of poking that to the side and pushing that 8 millimeter bead up so that I can get to the holes. And I'm putting my string to the left. I'm using my right hand to do it, but I'm putting the string to the left of all that frilly stuff and pulling it through. Okay, so now I have 4. So we're going to put on our next one. So oat, 2.5 millimeter, oat. Okay, so now I need to figure out which bead in the ring I have to put my string through. So I can see my string is coming out of this bead right here. So we're going to skip this bead right here. This is the bead where we got our nice mountain coming up the side. So we're going to skip that one, and we're going to go into the next one in our ring, which is this one right here. I got it pinched here. And I'm noticing that my last triangle sequence was to the left of all of my frilly stuff. So I got to make sure that I push all my frilly stuff to the right down here and push up my bead so that I can stick my string to the left. And this is my tail getting in the way here. So I need to put my string to the left of all of the frilly stuff. This is my tail in the way again. Or maybe I should say still, in my way still. Okay, and pull that through. Okay, so now I got 5 on, so we got 1 more to do. So, oat, 2.5 millimeter, oat. Come back here, you. There we go. Oat, 2 millimeter, oat, 2.5 millimeter. Okay. Alright, so my string is coming out from here. Don't know if you can see that very well or not. String is coming out from here. It's making a beautiful mountain over the top of this bead right here. So I have to go through this bead right here. So I'm going to pinch it for you for a second. And I noticed that my triangle sequence is to the left of my frills over here, so I got to make sure that my triangle stuff is to the left of my frills over here. So I'm going to push my frills kind of to the side and push this, squish this bead out of the circle a little bit and put my string through so that the string is to the left of all that stuff, both going in and coming out. And I'm going to pull that tight. You'll notice my string is all bunching up for me, tying itself in knots, as is ever so helpful. I'm trying not to tighten it up too much until I figure out what's going on. That's very interesting. Very interesting knot. Little bead cluster. Okay, pull that through. Still trying to twist up. Look at that. Oh my goodness. All right, so now that's our first row of triangles we've got on. Looks a little like a Star of David. Okay, and now I can see that my string is coming out here, out of this bead right here. Can you see it? And I need to end up over here through this 2.5 millimeter bead. So I'm going to make my way up through the oat that's sitting right there. And if I can, through the 2.5 millimeter at the same time, but if I can't, that's okay too. It's coming out through there. You can string them one at a time if you want to, that's fine. You might have to some of the time, that's fine. That's normal. Okay, so now I'm coming out of this little 2.5 millimeter bead here, and I'm going to string an 8 millimeter bead between all of these triangle points. So go ahead, put an 8 millimeter bead on your string. Let it fall down. Oh, I dropped it on the floor. I'll have to pick it up later. All right, so we're coming out of this 2.5 millimeter bead and our string is facing that way. So we're going to put our string through the next 2.5 millimeter in our ring that way. And pull it tight. And now we're going to do that again. We're going to put on our next 8 millimeter. And then I can see that my string is coming out here and wanting to go this way. So we're going to go through the 2.5 millimeter in that direction, the next one. The next 2.5 millimeter bead in that direction. So there we go. Pull it through. And we're going to do that again. So put on the next 8 millimeter. And we can see here where our string is coming out down here and wanting to go that way. So we're going to put our string through the next 2.5 millimeter bead in our ring that way. Okay, and now we're ready for our next 8 millimeter. Okay, now we gotta put it in the next bead in our ring. So I'm coming out of this bead here, and my string wants to go that way, so we're gonna put it through the next 2.5 millimeter bead that way. Like that. Okay, now we need our next 8 millimeter bead. So our string is coming out of this one here, and it's wanting to go this way. So we're going to find the next 2.5 millimeter bead in our circle, and we're going to go through that one. Look at how I pulled on that one and it came out. Let's see if we can tighten that up a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we have 5 in our circle, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need one more. Okay, and our string is coming out of this 2.5 millimeter bead right here, and it's wanting to go that way. So we're going to go back to our very first 2.5 millimeter bead, which is our next one in the ring, and put our string through there. And pull it through, pull it tight, pull it snug. So there we have the base of our bell right there. And we're going to go on to the next row. Our next row is going to be the same as this row here. We're going to put on triangles again. And this time we're going to go through the little gold beads. We're going to go through those gold beads again to as the bases of our triangle, or the bottom 2 vertices in our triangle. For all of those all of you geometry people out there who needed to, you know, use the word vertex in their normal everyday lives. So we're going to put on an oat, a 2.5 millimeter, and an oat. Okay, oat, 2 millimeter oat. Okay. And we look where our string is coming out. It's coming out of this one here. And we need to skip this black one. And look at my string wants to go that way. So we're going to skip this black one and go in the next 2.5 millimeter in our string, in our ring, that way, that same direction. And pull it tight. Okay. Notice that time it's staying more tightly together. The more beads you put on, the more it locks the previous ones in place. So now we're going to put on another oat, 2.5 millimeter oat sequence. Oat, 2.5 millimeter oat. Okay, now we can find our string. It's coming out of this 2.5 millimeter there, and it's wanting to go that way. It's trying to make a mountain over this 8 millimeter here. So we want to go back through the next 2.5 millimeter one in our sequence. We're going to skip that 8 millimeter one and go into the 2.5 millimeter one. Now you can see I'm pinching this again to try and get this bead to stand out more so that I can get through it more easily. And I dropped my end. That was great because my beads are still on there somewhere. Okay, I caught it. And I caught it before the beads fell off. Yay! That's always a plus. There's nothing like stopping in the middle of a project to pick up all your beads off the floor, folks. All right, there we go. Looking good. Okay, now we're going to do that again. Oat. Two 2.5 millimeter. Oat. Okay, and I'm going to find where my string is coming out. It's coming out of this 2.5 millimeter here. It's making a mountain over this one. So we want to go in the 2.5 millimeter that's next. I'm squishing my ring again. This is my tail in the way. I'm going to try and sneak my string through that little hole. I actually had to loosen up my ring a little bit to get into it. So that may be a thing that you're going to have to do as well. There we go. All right, we're ready for our next one. So oat, 2.5 millimeter. Oat. Okay. Now we can find our string. It's coming out of this one here. It's trying to make a mountain over this one, and we want to go in our next 2.5 millimeter in our circle. And pull that through. Okay. Awesome. Now we can do the next one. Oat. Oh, it fell right back off. Come here, you. They're all being stubborn. Either that or I have my hands in a funny position. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. And let those fall down. All right, so we found our string. It's coming out of this bead here. It's going in that direction. It's trying to make a mountain over this one, or actually it's trying to make a mountain to the left of it. So we need to go through the very next 2.5 millimeter in our ring in that direction, and there it is. So I'm just kind of squishing my circle to try and get the holes somewhere where I can get to them, going through that bead and pulling tight, or pulling snug-ish, since we keep having to loosen that ring in order to get to the beads we need to get to. Okay, so this is going to be our last triangle sequence. So oat, or at least the last one in that row. Oat, 2.5 millimeter, oat, like so. Okay, and then we're going to look and see where our string is coming out. It's coming out here, out of this one here, and it's trying to make a mountain over this one. It's heading in this direction, so we got to go through this 2.5 millimeter bead here. So we're going to do that. I'm pinching it, try and get my hole somewhere where I can get to it. There, I got to it. So I'm going to pull it through. Okay, so now we have 6 in a row right there. And if you want to, you can tighten up that row a little bit because we're done with it. Okay. Okay, and now we got to get up here to put on our next row of 8 millimeter beads. So my string is right here, coming out of this 2.5 millimeter there in the middle of that X. So I'm going to go up this leg of the X because that's the direction my string wants to go, is that way. So I'm going to go up the next, that top left oat. It might be bottom right on yours, I don't know. Wherever your string is pointing you, that's the way you go. Okay, and then we also have to go through this little 2.5 millimeter right next door. Again, in the same direction that your string is already wanting to go. Okay, and pull that tight. Ish. Okay, now we're going to put on an 8 millimeter bead. This is the same as our other 8 millimeter bead row. So our string is coming out of this 2.5 millimeter bead, and we have to go through the next one in our sequence, right? String wants to go this way, so we're going to choose the next 2.5 millimeter in that same direction around our circle. Get our string through there and tighten it up. My string caught in my little table split again. Okay, we're going to keep doing that, but I'll do it with you. So another 8 millimeter bead on there, and then okay, we can see my string is coming out of this one here, and it wants to go this way. So we're going to go through the next 2.5 millimeter in our circle that way. You can see me too bending the ring again to help me get to the holes in that bead. Feel free to do that. You know, and if that technique doesn't work for you, that's fine. Different techniques work better for different people. So if there's a technique that works better for you, absolutely, by all means, do that. All right, we need another 8 millimeter bead. And we can see our string is coming out of this one here, and our string is going that way. So we're going to put our string through the next 2.5 millimeter that way. And you saw me grab my string probably to get it out of the way so that I don't cause myself a knot. Okay, there we go. So now another 8 millimeter bead. Okay, so we have found our string. It's coming out of this 2mm bead, 2.5mm bead right there, and it wants to go in that direction. So we're going to find the next 2.5mm bead in our circle and find that one, and put our string through it going in that same direction. And pull that through. And this other string down here, that's my other end of my working string, all curled around. This one over here, that's my tail. Okay, now we're ready for another 8mm bead. Okay, so we found where our string is coming out of our 2.5mm bead there. It's coming out in that direction, so we're going to find the 2.5mm bead that's next in our ring going that direction, and put our string through going in that same direction. If I can find the hole. There it is. There we go. Pull that through. There we go. Okay, one more 8mm bead in that row. So we are coming out of this 2.5mm bead here, and our string is going in this direction, so we got to find our next 2.5mm bead in that row, which is this one right here. So we're going to go through that bead in the same direction and pull it through. You saw me turn my bell upside down. That was so that gravity would pull that bead down so that it would keep it from looping around, keep the string from looping around here, because it was wanting to do that. So I'm snugging that row up a little bit. Okay, now we're ready for our next triangle row. We're going to do that triangle and then 8mm bead thing 2 more times. We're going to have a total of 4 of these rows of 6 8mm beads. If I put this one sideways, you can kind of see 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so here's my end string. We're going to put on an oat, 2.5mm oat sequence. Oat, 2.5mm oat. Okay, and we're going to go through the next 2.5mm bead in our sequence. So we can see that our string is coming out of this one here, and it's trying to make a nice mountain over top of this one. And our string is going in this direction, so we need to go in the next 2.5mm bead in that sequence, which is right here in our circle. So we're going to put our string through there. And you can see me, again, pinching my work so that I can get at that hole more easily. Now, if you've got this down and you don't want to watch me go through every bead for the rest of this ornament, go ahead and skip up to the last row of this. Fast forward through and find that. Because this can get really repetitive, but I know that there are some of you out there who really need help with every single bead, trying to figure this out, and that is absolutely fine. We all have our strengths in different areas, and but we all like to do fun things, and for me, I find this fun, and I want everybody else to enjoy this too, and to be successful. And if that means helping you with every single bead, I am down for that. All right, I'm totally down for that. All right, so we're ready for our next oat, 2.5mm oat sequence, our little triangle sequence. I'm going to call it a triangle. Kind of makes a triangle, right? All right, so I can see my string is coming out of this bead right here. and it's going in that direction. So I need to go through the next 2.5 millimeter bead in the circle in that direction, which is this one right here. I'm kind of pinching my work so I can get at the holes better, and I'm going to stick my string through going in that same direction. Okay, now we need to do that again. So we're going to put on oat, two and a half millimeter oat. We gotta find where our string is coming out. Okay, our string is coming out of this one right here. So when we're making a mountain over this bead right here, so we gotta go through the next 2.5 millimeter bead in our circle, which is this one, and we have to keep our string going in that same direction. So going through here like that, and pulling it tight-ish. Okay. Now we're ready for our next one. So, oat, 2.5 millimeter oat. All right. And now we can see that our string is coming out of this bead right here, and it's making a mountain over this black one here. So we got to find our next 2.5 millimeter bead in the sequence, which is right here, and we need to keep our string going in the same direction. So we're going to put it through this way, and I'm squishing my work so that I can get at those holes a little better. Okay, now we're ready to do it again. So we have an oat. They keep running away from me. An oat, 2.5 millimeter, and an oat. Okay, I gotta find my string. Here it is. It's coming out of this bead here. It's making a nice mountain over this one here, so we got to go to the next 2.5 millimeter in our circle, which is this one here. And you can see me already pinching my work so I can get at those holes. And I got to keep my string going in that same direction, so it's going this way. So I'm going to go this way through that, just like that, and pull that tight-ish. Okay, and we're going to do that one more time. Oat, 2.5 millimeter oat. Okay, I've got to find where our string is coming out. It's coming out here, and it's making a mountain over this one. So we're going to go through the next one in our sequence, which is right here. Our string is going this way, so we got to keep our string going that way. So we're going to do it like this, through that. I'm going to wiggle these beads around so I can get at the holes. May take a little finagling because it's the last one / first one in our ring. There we go, I got it. I'm going to pull that through. Okay. All right, so now we have to get up to our next row so that we can put on our next row of black ones. So my string is coming out of this bead right here, and I have to get up here. So that's the top left part of the X that bunch of beads makes. So I'm going to have to go through this oat right here, and then this 2.5 millimeter right here to get myself all set up. So I'm going to squish this whatever way I need to get my string through there. And I'm going to move this back over here because I don't want to tie a knot in it. Pull that through. So that got me through the oat. And now I got to get through this 2.5mm bead right here. So I'm holding this kind of upside down a little bit so that like the hole is more accessible right here, because I don't know that the pinching technique is going to work for me right this second. You see that? I just grabbed it and wrenched it out a little bit. And I think it moved again already. So yeah, these holes can be tricky to get through. But it can be done. Sometimes it takes a few tries. Sometimes it takes like 10 tries or 20. That's okay. Sometimes the strings get crossed in there and then it gets hard to put one through. Alright, so now we're going to put on our 8mm beads again. And I am missing a bunch of 8mm beads in here. I'm going to have to steal some from my big bucket. Don't know how that happened. 1, 2, 3. I'm just gonna put a handful in here. All right, so we're gonna put an 8mm bead on our string. Okay, we're gonna find where our string is coming out of. It's coming out of here, out of this 2.5mm. Our string is going this way, so we need to go in the next 2.5mm bead in our circle, which is this one right here, and we need to keep our string going in the same direction. So this way, through that little bead. This is gonna, I think, be a trickier row. I'm finding it trickier, at least. Maybe if I didn't have it pulled quite so tight, it would be easier. Maybe. So here we go, pulling that through. All right, that's through. Look at my tail trying to get in the way. Put on our next 8mm. Okay, my string is coming out here. It's going in that direction. So we need to go through the next 2.5mm bead in that direction, which is this one. And we need to keep our string going in that same direction. So we're going to put it through like this. All right. And now we're going to do that again. Going to put our 8mm through and figure out where our string is coming from. It's coming from here. So we need to, and it's going this way, our string is painting that way, so we need our next 2.5mm in our circle, which is this one right here. And we need to keep our string going in the same direction. So we're going to put it through like this. There we go. Okay, now we're ready for our next 8mm bead. Go ahead and put that on. Okay, and we're going to figure out where our string is coming from. It's coming from this one here. It's going in that direction. So you need to find the next bead going in that direction, our next 2.5mm, which is that one right there. And we need to put our string through going in that same direction. Okay, like that. Okay, we got 2 more in that row. So 1 more 8mm on our string. Okay, Okay, and then we're finding out where our string is coming out of. It's coming out of that hole. It's going that way, so that's the direction we're going to put it through our next 2.5 millimeter bead. And our next 2.5 millimeter bead in our circle is this one right here. So we're going to put our string that way through that bead and pull that tight. Okay, the last one in this ring. Get our last 8 millimeter bead for that ring, put it on. Alright, so now we need to figure out which bead we're going to put in next. So here's where our string is coming out, this 2.5 millimeter there. And we need to go through the next 2.5 millimeter on our string. So our string is going that way, so this is the next one in the ring. So we're going to put our string through there, going in the same direction. Notice I'm squishing my work again so that I can try and get to this hole a little better. You saw me pull it out with my thumbnail so that the hole is more visible, more accessible. And now it's just a matter of trying to convince it to go through there. It's taking some convincing this time. There we go. And pull that through. I'm going to hold it upside down so that it's... Uh-oh, I have a knot in my string. Oh no! So, confession time. Yesterday, my camera ran out of space while I was in the middle of shooting this video. So it's been sitting here overnight while I divested my camera of all of the previous videos. And my son found this half done on my table this morning and was wrapping it around his Paw Patrol doll, adorning him. So now I've got a figure 8 knot stuck in the middle of my string here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it out or not. I hope so. Alright, I'm going to pause this video while I get this knot out and I'll be back with you. Yay, I was able to get the knot out. So now I'm going to try and thread that bead again. There it is. Come on. The folks are waiting on you. Please. You know, it never hurts to be polite when you're talking to your beads. Came through easier before. I think it's getting caught up on the strings that are already in there. Oh, and maybe the hole is smaller on the far side too, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's going in and it feels like it's getting caught on something. There we go. Okay. Now that we've finished that row, we are going to do our next row of triangles. So that's oat bead, 2.5 millimeter oat bead. Oat, 2.5. There we go. And oat. Like so. And now we got to figure out which 2.5 millimeter bead we're going to do. So here is where our string is coming out. It's making a nice mountain over this bead. So we need to do the next 2.5 millimeter bead in the row, which is this one right here. And we need our string to go in the same direction that it's been going, so that's that way. So we're going to put our string through this one. There, that one went in easier than the last one. Pull that tight-ish. It's not going to be super tight because it's going to loosen up as soon as we let go of our string. Oh my goodness, I'm tying it nuts. There we go. And you saw it all bunching up against itself. It'll want to do that because the string is curly. All right, another oat. Another 2.5 millimeter. And another oat. Okay, now we got to go through the next 2.5 millimeter on our row. So here my string is coming out of this one and making a mountain over this one. So the next one is this one right here. And we want our string to be keeping going in that same direction. So I'm going to put it in like that. And pull it snug. And do the next one. Oat. Get back here. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. Okay. I'm going to turn this way again so that my beads don't fall out. Okay, now we gotta find our next 2.5 millimeter in our row. So this is the one my string is coming out of. It's making a mountain over this one. So this is the 2.5 millimeter that's next in our chain. We want to keep our string going in that same direction, which is this way. So we're going to put our string through that one that way. And pull it snug. Next one, oat. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. All right, now we go through our next 2.5 millimeter in our round. So here's where my string is coming out. It's making a mountain over this one. So this one's the next one in our chain. And we want to keep our string going in that same direction, so we're going to put it through this way. All right, now for our next one. Oat. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. And now we got to figure out which one is next. So our string is coming out of this one here. It's making a nice mountain over this bead here. So this one here is our next 2.5 millimeter. And we want to keep our string going in that same direction. So I'm going to put in my string that way. Pull it snug. All right, we got one more. So oat. 2.5 millimeter. Oat. All right, so now we got to put it in the next 2.5 millimeters. So here's where our string is coming out right here. It's making a mountain over this one. And so our next one in the series is this one here. And this is the last one. So actually, no, we're going to go through this one right here and keep our string going the same direction. And this is the one that I had trouble going through the last time, so it's probably going to take me a few minutes to get this. But I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to use all my tricks, and I'm going to squish it and try and push it through there. It's being really stubborn, folks. So this is the type of problem you might expect to have. one just has a smaller hole than the other ones. I don't know, but this is not wanting to go through. But it has to. It has to. Okay, there, I've pulled it really, really tight to pull all of the strings to one side so that I have a bit of a gap at the top of the bead. So I'm going to see if that works. And you might be asking, well, Caroline, why are you leaving this section in? And I'm leaving this section in because you need to know that even as experienced beaders are going to have troubles and difficulties, and maybe watching me try and get my string through there is going to help you get your string through there on your project when you have an issue. Because it's a problem that's bound to come up sooner or later. So I keep trying to wiggle this and push the string, push. Oh, I see what the problem is. The hole is blocked in there by some paint or something. Okay, I'm gonna steal a pin from my ribbon over here, and I am gonna see if I can stick that in and break the paint out of there. Got the pin through, but did it move the paint? I think it did. I think it did. Okay, now where's the end of my string? Down there. And I'm lucky that my beads didn't fall off in the middle of all that. Alright, so now let's figure out where I'm going again. Okay, my string is coming out of there, making a mountain over there, so my string has to go that way, and this is the next one in my ring. And it went through and through the oat next door too, but it was the wrong oat next door. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we're going to do our next row that has the 8mm beads on it. So we need to get up to our higher row of 2.5mm, and in order to do that, we have to go through this oat bead row. Oh shoot! Whew! That was my cutting board falling down. Sorry about that, folks. It scared me. Okay, and the cat too. She sat right up. Okay, so we're going to go through this oat bead and then this 2.5mm bead to get up to do our next row of 8mm beads. So let's go ahead and do that. For me, it's my top left oat bead. And look at that, it went through both beads at the same time because it decided that since I had so much trouble on that other bead, it's just going to behave so nicely for me now. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself. Alright, so now that we're through both the oat and the 2.5mm, if yours didn't go through the 2.5mm, go ahead and thread that one through right now. And I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Now we're ready for our next row. So we're going to put on an 8mm. And we're going to go through our next 2.5mm in our row. So this is where my work is coming out. And this is the next 2.5mm around. So we're going to go through that one. See how my string is wanting to just naturally push itself that way. So we're going to go through this 2.5mm right here. And pull that through. Pull on our next 8mm. And then we can put it through the next 2.5mm so I can see my string is coming out here and it's wanting to go that way. So the next one that way is this one right here. So we got to keep our string going through that same direction. There we go, and pull that through. Okay, now we're ready for our next 8mm. Okay, so now I can see it's coming out of this 2.5mm right here. And I need to put it through the next 2.5mm in our row. So it's going here. And we want to keep our string going in that same direction around. So our string is going to go through like that. Pull that snug. Okay, now we're ready for our next 8mm. Put that on. Okay, now we need to go through our next 2.5mm. So our string is coming out of this one, heading that way. So our next one in our series is this one, and we need to put our string in going that way still. Come on, need to get my hole where I can see it. Push it through. Pull our string tightish, snuggish. Okay, now we're ready for our next 8mm. And now we need to put it through our next 2.5mm. So our string is coming out of this one and pointing that way. So this is our next one in the series, and we need to keep our string pointing that way. There we go, threaded through there. And pull that snug. And you can see my ring before that is loosening up, so I'm just gonna pull on my string and tighten it up a little bit. And there we go. And now we need our last 8mm for that row, so we're gonna put that guy on. And now we need to put it through our next 2.5mm. So here's where our string is coming out, right here. So our next 2.5mm in our row is right here. So we're going to go through that one. I didn't make a knot, did I? No, I didn't. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Okay, and I just tightened that up a little bit. Okay, now we need to do our next triangle row. So that's oat, 2.5mm, oat, okay, and then we have to find our next 2.5mm in our ring. So my string is coming out of this one right here, and it's making a mountain over this 8mm. So this one here is the next one in my row, and I need to keep my string going in that same direction. So I'm going to pinch this a little bit so that I can get to the hole in that bead a little bit better, and put my string through there just like that and pull it snug. Okay, next one, oat, 2.5mm, oat. Okay, let that fall down. Now I need to go in my next 2.5mm in my ring. So my string is coming out there, and it's forming a mountain over this one. So we need to keep our string going in that direction, and this is the next 2.5mm in our ring. So we're going to put our string through there, going in that same direction. Oh, I think it just went behind the bead. There we go. Okay, now for our next one. Oat, 2.5mm, an oat. Okay, and now we need to go in our next 2.5mm in our ring. So I can see my string is coming out of that one. It's making a mountain over this one. So I turn and there's my next 2.5 millimeter, and I need to keep my string going in that same direction, so I'm going to put it through like that. And pull that snug. Now we're ready for the next one. So oat bead, 2.5 millimeter. Oat bead. Whoops, I dropped it, but I got it again. Whoops, but I dropped it again, and I got it again. All right, there we go. And now we need to put that through our next 2.5 millimeter in our row. So here's my string coming out, and here it is going that way, making a mountain. So this is the next one in our row right here, and we need to keep our string going that way. There we go. All right, and now we can put on our next one. So oat, 2.5 millimeter, oat. All right. And so our string is coming out of this one here, and it's making a mountain over this one. So this one is the next one in our chain, and we want to keep our string going in that same direction, so we're going to put it through like that. There we go. And pull that snug. All right, now we're ready for our last one in that row. So oat, 2.5 millimeter, and oat, and we're going to put it in our next one in our chain. So here's where my string is coming out, this one right here, and we were making a mountain over this one. So this one here is the next one in our row. So that's the one we're going to go through, and we're going to keep our string going in that same direction. There we go. Let's see, is that our last row of 8 millimeter beads? We're going to have to count. Here's my example one. So we have our row of 12 here, and then here's row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. So we have 4 rows of beads in our mountain, in our bell. So we have, there's our starting row. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now this time we're still gonna go up to this 2.5 millimeter bead to put on our last row, but instead of putting 8 millimeter beads in between, we're gonna put 2.5 millimeter beads between, and that's gonna cinch it up around this top to bring the curve in. So here's where our string is coming out, down here from this bead, and we need to get it up here to this bead right here. So we're gonna do that by going through this oat bead and then through the 2.5 millimeter bead. And again, we're gonna keep our string going in that same direction. So there I've got it through the oat, and now I gotta get it through this 2.5 millimeter bead. Okay. Okay, awesome. All right, so now we're gonna put on another 2.5 millimeter bead. And we're gonna go in the next one in our circle. So here's my string coming out, and my string is going this way. It's pointing in the direction I need to go. So this is the next one in the ring right here, and we need to keep our string going in that same direction. So put it through like that and pull it tight, snug. It's gonna just pop right back open, but you know, at least we can have it like that. All right, now our next 2.5 millimeter. There we go. And we're going to go through the next one in our ring. So here's where my string is coming out. This is my tail flopping over. So we're coming out of that one, and our string is pointing this way. So this is the next one in our loop, in our circle, in our line. And we need to keep the string going in that same direction. So we're going to put our string through like that. And pull it tight-ish. Okay, now we're ready for our next one. 2.5 millimeter bead on. Okay, now we need to go through our next one in our ring. So here's where my string is coming out, and it's pointing that way. So we're going to turn the bell. There's the bead we need to go through, and we need to keep the string going in that same direction. So there it is. Okay, now we're going to put on another 2.5 millimeter bead. And go through the next 2.5 millimeter bead in our ring. So here's where my string is coming out. The string is pointing that way. So here's the next one in our series. And we're going to keep the string going in that same direction. So there we go, through that bead. Alright, now we're going to go through the next one. Actually, now we're going to put on another 2.5 millimeter bead. Okay, and then we're going to go through the next one in our chain. So this is where my string is coming out right here, and it's pointing in that direction. See it just springing over there in an arc. So we're going to line up the next 2.5 millimeter bead in our series here, and we're going to keep our string going in that same direction and go through that bead. My last row is getting kind of loosey-goosey. All right, I'm going to put on another 2.5 millimeter now. Whoops, I dropped it and it fell on the floor, so I'm going to grab a new one. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got to do the next one in our row. So here's where my string is coming out, and it's wanting to go that way. So I'm going to turn this. Here's my next one in the series right here. And I want to keep the string going in the same direction, so I'm going to go this way through the bead. All right. Okay, and now we've been all the way around once. We're going to go and string our string through all of those 2.5 millimeter beads one more time so that it's nice and strong and will stay tight. So we're going to keep our string going in that same direction and just go through all of the beads that we just put on and just went through. So here's the loose one, and here's the stuck one, the one that was at the top of our triangle. Okay, here's the next loose one, and I don't know if it went through that stuck one or not. It did, it went way down. Okay, there we go. When you have it going too far, if you just pull back on your string a little bit, you'll eventually see your end pop up. And then you can try and maneuver it where you want to. Okay, here's our next loose one. And there's our next fixed one. Okay, here's our next loose one right here. I want this out of the way, so I'm just going to grab it with my lower fingers to pull it out of the way. Keeping going in that same direction, through the loose one, through the tight, fixed one. Okay, next, through the next loose one, through the next fixed one. Okay, this is my tail in the way. The next loose one, the next fixed one if I can. I did it, yay! Okay, so now if you look carefully, we've got 2 strings going through all of the beads all the way around. Okay, so we're going to try and get that nice and snug. So I'm going to try and find the string that I just put in and pull it tight if I can. Okay, for some reason one of mine isn't wanting to tighten up. So this is a thing, you might just have to play with it for a minute to get the right string, to be pulling on the right string in the right direction to tighten that up. And I'm thankful right now to have a thumbnail. Oh, there we go. That I can squeeze in there. Okay, there we go. It's nice and tight. It's probably going to just spring back on me. Yup. Okay, so that's great right there. That's what we want. Okay, now we're going to put on this cross piece right here. All right, or at least parts of it. Okay, so we're going to put on 2 oats right now. That's my tail. I don't want the tail right now. I want the working end, and I want 2 oats on there. 1, 2. Uh-oh, I dropped it. Went on the floor. Let's grab a new one out of the bucket. If I weren't shooting a video, I might stop and pick those up, but since I'm shooting a video, I'm not gonna. All right, so now we want to get this string through the bead that's directly across the hexagon or circle from where my string is coming out. So my string is coming out of this one right here and facing that way. And so this is the next one. Actually, I'm going to turn it like this because this is the point of my triangle right here. So I need to go through the bead that's the point of the triangle directly across. So that's this one. So if you can tell which ones are which, so this is a loose, this is a triangle, this is a loose, this is a triangle, this is a loose. So I'm going to skip 2 triangle beads, 1, 2, and it'll go through the next one. And we're going to go through in that same direction. This one, it doesn't matter quite as much, but we're going to go through in the same direction because that's good practice. Okay. And then we're going to turn a U-turn and go back through one of those oat beads, just the near one. So there I've turned my U-turn and I'm going to go back through 1 oat bead. Just 1. Okay, and then tighten it up. Doesn't have to be tight, 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 just, you know, tight-ish. And I'm tugging on this side, the non-loop side, and then the loop side, just to snug up that ring a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to put on another oat bead. And now I got to figure out which bead over here I'm going to put it in. And it's going to be the bead between the 2 arms of the triangle on one side or the other. It doesn't matter which of those. But so here was a loose bead. Here's the top of my triangle. and then here's a loose bead, and then here's the top of the triangle, and here's a loose bead, and here's the top of a triangle. Now we're already through these two, so we need this bead right here. We're just gonna count, if we want to, count 1, 2, 3 beads over. This is the one strings are coming out, 1, 2, 3 beads over. So it's the third bead away from the one that we put in, and it's a loose bead because we came through tight beads the other way. So we're going to go through that and pull our oat up, and then we're going to turn a U-turn again and go up that way. And we're going to do the same thing for the fourth oat up here. We're going to put on our oat, and then on this side we're going to go through the third bead away from the ones that our strings are coming out. So this is where our strings are coming out, right here, this bead right here. So 1, 2, 3, this is the third one over. So we're going to go through that bead, and I can't tell what way my string is going at this point, and it doesn't really matter. So just get your string through that bead in any direction, doesn't matter. Okay, pull that tight-ish, snug. There we go. And now we're going to turn a U-turn and go back through that oat bead. Okay, now we're going to do the clapper part. The clapper part is this part right here that clacks when you shake the bell. Okay, let's see if I can count how many beads I put on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so we're going to put on 17 2.5 millimeter. Actually, before we do that, where you can see my string is coming up the top of the bell. So right now I'm going to poke my string down any one of these holes around my cross right here, down, straight down. Grab it out the other end, like so, just so that my string is pointing down. That's all we need, just pointing down. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to put on 17 2.5 millimeter beads. I'm going to move these things out here. Pick up 17 of my beads, and I'm going to do it needle style this time because I think it'll be faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to let them fall down now. 11, 12, 13, 14, 14, 15, 16, 17. And let those fall down. Now I'm going to put on an 8 millimeter bead. Let that fall down. Then I'm going to put in one more 2.5 millimeter bead. Let that fall down. I'm going to grab up my other beads into my hand, into my left hand. And then I'm going to let that 2.5 millimeter bead fall. I'm going to turn a U-turn and go back through these beads. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to lay my working end right beside the string that's coming out, and then just move my beads, slide my beads back onto that end. So there's that one. There we go, just sliding them on. These are being pesky. Mine are just wanting to go on one at a time, which is fine. But sometimes it's nice and they go on many at a time. That's very convenient. Do I have more beads stuck up there. See, I shook my bell up. I picked it up and shook it to make sure all my gold beads were slid down. So I don't want to miss any of them. Camera having trouble focusing again. Oh, that's the one I'm working on. It can't get too far away now. Trying moving all this stuff out of frame so that my camera can focus. Okay, now I've been through all of my, yep, I don't have any more stuck up in there. Okay, to tighten this, I'm going to find that last gold bead that I put on, and look at this tangling up in a mess. So I gotta get it kind of untangled here. Tying in knots, always helpful. Again, if you find yourself with knots, don't pull them tight. Try and work them out while they're nice and loose. Oh, did I tie a Frills knot down here? Okay, no, it was just a slip knot. So once I get that all so that I have a nice loop again, I'm going to hold this bead, my tail bead, so that the string can flow through it easily. Come here. I'm going to hold it in my fingers so that the hole is like north-south. If I don't keep dropping it, north-south in my fingers like that. Okay, and then I'm going to pull on my working end, which is right here. And that'll cinch that up. Now, I need enough slack on here that I can get back through my bell. And I'm going to get it back through my bell before I get this all the way tightened back up. So if I look at this carefully, I can see that my string is going down through this quadrant. I want it to come back up over here to keep the clapper nice and centered in the middle. So it's going down here. I want it to come up over here. So I'm going to stick my end through there and just do my best to do that. If I can't, it's not the end of the world, folks. If I can't, it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to pull that up through there. And then I'm going to go find this bead again, this tail end bead, and hold it like I did before. And then continue to pull on my working end until that whole clapper thing. Oh, look at that. It popped up through. So I'm going to pop it back down in there. But I'm going to hold that until, and pull it until it's nice and snug up there. I don't know if you can see it or not if you look through there, but they're nice and snug against my top cross there. And then I'm going to wrap my finger around so that I can pull it carefully snug. And you can see it popped up again, but there's only like a tiny bit of string here. That's just enough string for it to fall down underneath, I think. So, and how I'm tightening that up at the end is I put my thumbnail through here. I mean, I can't get my fingers close enough anymore. So I stuck my fingernail in there and I'm pushing against that 8mm bead with my thumb while I'm pulling that other bead, pulling the 2mm bead with my finger, and then I've got tension on my line by putting a loop around my finger. And now I'm going to push my thumb against the top of the bell and pull the slack out, and I'm just going to let my fingernail come back up to that 8mm bead as I pull the slack. So I've only got a little bit of slack down in there now. I don't know if I can get it any better than that, honestly. Not really. I think it's tightening up my ring, this ring, while I'm trying to do that, which that's fine. That's just fine. All right, I think that's as good as I can get it. Okay, so now we got to put on the handle, and that's about it. So we're going to put on an 8mm bead. And I don't remember how many beads I had on the handle of these. 25 maybe? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 35. Okay, I have 35 on there. So there ought to be 35 in, if you bought a kit from me, there ought to be 35 in your kit. You also probably have a few extras. You might have a few extras unless you had some stuck together that you couldn't get apart earlier, or you had one with a hole blocked earlier, or you had a broken one earlier or something like that. You also may have a few oat beads left over, so if you want to make your handle longer with any of those beads that you have left, you are absolutely welcome to do that. That's what I did on this one. I put in my extra oats down at the bottom, well, at each end, I guess, of my chain, and then just put the round ones in the middle. So you can do that if you want to, or you can strictly keep it with your 30, or, you know, anywhere in between. Whatever you want. I'm gonna just put on my 30, I think. So I'm gonna, again, hold this like a needle and then pick them up out of my tray. I think that's gonna be easiest for me. You do it however it works for you. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, maybe. Nope. 3, 4, 5. Let those fall. 6, 7, 8. Whoops. 8, 9, 10, 11. Whoops. 11. 12, 13, 14, 15. Those are stuck together. 16, 17. Whoops. That one fell back off. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Uh-oh. 22. Okay, I need some more of those. So I'm going to put a few more in my tray here. Try not to forget how many I have on there in the meantime. Boy, a lot of stuck together ones. So sometimes if you've got stuck together ones, you can stick your thumbnail or a pair of scissors or something in between there and break them apart like that. Sometimes they're too stuck and that won't work. And I see that half of mine are going flying after I do this. I had a lot of those in my tray, so I had to stop and do this. All right, so I had 22 in on my string. Gotta find the end carefully so that I don't drop them all onto the floor. Here we go. So I had 22 on there. $23, $24, $25, $26, $27, $28, $29, $30. Okay, now I'm going to turn a U-turn with my string and go back through the 8mm bead to make my handle. And this one should just, I was keeping my hand in here while I pulled on my working thread to make it nice, but then when I get to the end, I can just hold on to the 8mm bead and keep pulling and it'll cinch right up. All right, now I'm going to find the first oat bead that I put on, and I can tell which one it is because there will only be 2 strings coming out at the bottom. So this one there will only be 1 string. So this one has 2. This one, gotta pull on it a little bit. Okay, that's the one that only has 1. But I'm going to go around and show you. This one has 2. This one has 2. This one has 2. And then this one is the one that has 1. So I'm going to go back through that bead from the top to the bottom. I'm going to do that right now. That's my tail getting in the way. Okay, and now I'm going to find that 2.5 millimeter bead that my string was going through to get up that oat bead. You can see it coming out this side of this oat bead right there. So I'm going to put my string through the other way, well, this way, so that I have a string going through that same bead from this side, so that I have a string going into that oat, one from either side of this 2.5 millimeter bead. And there I was able to get it through without any problem. I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to make any knots here. And pull that through. Uh-oh, it looped around my hanger. Better get that undone. Okay. And that will help keep that cross up here nice and evenly spaced around your hexagon, circle. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back through oats and 2 millimeter beads to get back to the beginning, back to this tail, and that's where we're going to tie it off. So this is just going to be a matter of looking and doing. So here I've got my string coming out up here. I need to get down. So in order to get down, I'm going to go through here, then sideways through here, down through here, sideways through here, down through here, sideways through the 2.5, down through this oat, sideways for the 2.5, down through this oat, and then I can go this way through my 8 millimeter bead right here, and then I end up right where my tail is. So I imagine you're going to have a very similar situation to that. So I'm just going to do that now. You can watch me do it. I'm going to go down through this oat bead. There we go. And then sideways towards that, through that 2 millimeter right there. My goal is to get over here, so I'm just going to travel however it makes sense to get back over to here. If you're having a hard time figuring that out, ask somebody that's around you, because maybe they can see it in a different way than you. Even if they're not a beater, maybe they can see the path for you. My string is actually naturally wanting to go that way. Now that I've gone through my first couple of beads, my string is wanting to naturally go there, and see how it wants to cross over this 2.5 millimeter right here to get over to this oat. That tells me I need to go through that 2.5 millimeter and keep my string going in the same direction. Be careful not to pass your tail or your working end through your loops. And now my string is kind of coming out, but we remember we have to go through that arm of that X. Okay. Look at that, it did it again. Oh my goodness. There, stick my thumb there. Okay, so now we have that same situation where I've got an X here and the string wants to go through this oat bead, but it's also crossing over this 2.5 millimeter bead, so we need to go through that 2.5 millimeter first. We want to keep our string going as close to that same direction as we can. And then we can keep going with our X over here. Get through that oat bead. There we go. Okay, now we got to go down through this one. It's not making quite such a perfect X, but there it is. We need to go through this 2.5 millimeter and then this oat. And this 2.5 millimeter might be tricky. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling down the edge of my bell and trying to squish my bell a little bit just so that I can get to that hole. This is going to be the trickiest one. Okay, and now we're going to go through that second half of our X right there. Oh, my string is covering up the hole. Again, I'm having trouble getting access to that hole, so I'm squishing my bell over and I'm pulling my string out of the way with my bottom fingers. Just whatever I gotta do to uncover that hole. I think it's through. It is. It's through. And it's hiding in my other bead. So there it is. Okay, and now I gotta get one bead over to get to here. This is my tail. You can see the end of it there. And this is my working thread. So I got to get through this bead right here. And that's it. And I can do that from the top. That's fine. So there's the hole is in this one. Again, I'm kind of wiggling my beads around until I can see the hole and get my string through there. There we go. Now, you might notice that this string is over here on this side of the frilly things. And this string is over here on this side of the frilly thing. So I'm going to go underneath this frilly thing with my working thread so that both of those threads are in the same spot. Okay, so now they're right beside each other, right between the same two beads. So that is where I'm going to tie my knot. I'm going to tie a square knot because square knots are real stable. So they're not going to fall out on you. Okay, and this is fishing line or monofilament, and monofilament is quite slippery, so it likes to come undone unless you get it real tight. So how you get it real tight is you pull it until you can feel it and or see it stretching a little bit, and then it will relax back into the knot and stay. So to make a square knot, I'm going to do left over right. So this is my left hand. So I'm going to put my left string over top my right string and then tuck the thread under. This is just like tying your shoes. Okay. So I'm going to pull that down and I'm going to wrap it around my fingers and pull it nice and tight until I can feel this little stretch in there, and then let it go. And now I'm going to put my right hand side over my left hand side and tuck under to make the second half of my square knot. And pull that tight. Again, wrap around your fingers and pull it until it stretches, and then let it relax into the knot. And then I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to put left over right this time and tuck it under. And again, wrap around your fingers or whatever and pull it until you can feel it stretching. And then let it relax back into the knot. And that's it, folks. We're going to cut it off. My side cutters are sitting right here, so I'm going to use my side cutters, but scissors are fine for this. Absolutely perfect. I think my son walked off with mine. Oh no, they're over there. Okay. There we have it, all tied off. You can barely see the knot because fishing line is transparent. It's pretty hard to see in there. You're not going to find it unless you're looking for it, which is awesome. Okay, so there you have it. There's your little bell. This loop ought to be big enough that you can slide it over a Christmas tree branch. Might be difficult. Did I not put enough beads on there? My hanger looks small. Doesn't matter very much. So you did it! Yay! I'm proud of you. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you on the next one. If you really liked this video or any of my videos, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.